Director Hamaguchi says, once we release the third installment, there is a possibility of having a DLC for that third installment. With the conclusion of the Final Fantasy VII Remake trilogy, there's probably going to be a much wider audience for Final Fantasy as a whole. Whether we bring another new DLC or a full title, that's something that we're actively considering. I'm seeing some misrepresentation with this quote, and there's a couple things I do want to talk about with it. So in regards to another new DLC, that specifically is obviously what he's saying for Part 3. We know with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and he even says it as much up here, they did have plans for a DLC for Rebirth, but for the sake of getting Part 3 out quicker and not keeping fans waiting, they opted to just go straight into Part 3, which I think was a great decision. Rebirth has a lot of content in there, some of which I haven't even completed myself, and I'm sure many people as well haven't done. So the need for a DLC for that wasn't really there, and I totally get that. Now, when he talks about a whole new title or a full title, he's not talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake Trilogy. He even says as much here, Remake Trilogy, meaning 3, that's finite. When he's talking about full title, if you look at it, he does say Final Fantasy as a whole, talking about how the Remake Trilogy brought new fans into Final Fantasy. Full title definitely represents either Final Fantasy 17, Final Fantasy 18, or a Final Fantasy spin-off looking like Strangers of Paradise. Now, what I find interesting when it comes to DLC for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, let me take you guys to Costa del Sol for a second, right? I have this on my other monitor. If we go to Costa del Sol, I'm in chapter 13 right now. I don't know if many people have really noticed this. We talked about this a few times, but there's actually a very interesting bit of dialogue here that we can talk about. There's a guy in the back. I don't know if he appears until after chapter 12, but if you go and you stand next to him, he does say some really interesting things that's kind of like, okay, what is he talking about here?
You stumble into the wrong place or what, punk? This is Blood Duel. Tough to get in, tougher to make it out alive. Much as I'd love to give you a warm welcome, we're closed for renovations. Consider yourself lucky.
This man said Club Duel. We have never once heard about that or it being referenced in any way. This very well could have been early DLC plans that were scrapped for Rebirth. And of course, he's appearing in a chapter where chapter 13, which is where I am, is widely known as the wrap-up chapter, where you can actually access the full map. You can go to the world map and fast travel to and from every location before you are prompted to finish the game. So this appearing here makes sense.
Here is survival of the strongest, and I don't see a shrimp like you lasting long. But if you want to prove me wrong when we reopen, come see the king.
Come see the king? That's not even the mayor. The king? Like, that is interesting choices of dialogue. Survival of the fittest. To me, this sounds like it could have been another battle challenge arena in some way, or it could have, in a very hopeful, cool way, been like a roguelite mode where every single room that you go through has unlimited possibilities, enemies of different types, you have different builds and different materials that you access. I would love that for this game. And I think that's about it that he says right there. Yeah, survival of the strongest. Don't see a shrimp like you lasting long. You gotta prove yourself when we reopen to the king. So it looks like that could be something that we experience or check out in part 3. And I personally hope if it is something, it's more than just a battle arena like what we have with VR and what we have with the Corel stuff. I'd like a DLC or a game mode specifically to exist in this game, to where we can kind of have like endless content if you think about it, right? If it's a roguelite where you go through different you can use different party combinations that you want, take different paths and get different builds. That type of stuff offers unlimited gameplay, and especially with a final title like Final Fantasy VII Returns Part 3, whatever it's going to be called, a DLC or a game mode like that would be fantastic and last a long time. The other idea is that once Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 is done, the new DLC that could come afterwards would be, of course, Advent Children. They've talked about how this entire story will link back up with Advent Children in some way. And I think it'd be a really smart move, because if you think about it, Advent Children is one of the most iconic CGI action movies for many, many years. Yes, of course, the dialogue is dated, but if you look at the graphics and the visual quality of that, fight scenes, the choreography, all of that is very iconic and inspired a whole lot. And was, quite frankly, probably, most likely, ahead of their time. So around the time that Advent Children was out and more people were getting into like Kingdom Hearts 2 and 1, witnessing Final Fantasy characters through that lens, that was pretty much an all-time high of FF7 and in general Final Fantasy being in a mainstream media type of way. Now imagine, marketing-wise, you bring that as like a DLC, Final Fantasy VII Advent Children DLC. That would bring on a lot more people, a ton of people into the series to want to enjoy and check that out, I think. So it'd be a pretty smart way to go about that. I do hope that with that, they still do a roguelite or something, so this way we can continue to play the third game for however long it is that we want and unlimited type of gameplay. So when it comes to part 3, I'm going to be keeping my eye on this guy. Yeah, you. I'm watching you. Got my eye on you, my guy. Club Duel. That dialogue is way too specific for it to be nothing. And if that is the case, I will be very disappointed. Now, speaking of Final Fantasy 17, 18, or the future of the series, is the future only action-based? Hamaguchi was asked this as well before they closed their interview. And he feels like the series and the future of the remake series, at least, main Final Fantasy titles. The interviewer basically brought up how the most recent Final Fantasies have abandoned the classic turn-based combat, and we're seeing titles like Expedition 33 come out and completely knock it out the park. To which Square Enix obviously hasn't fully abandoned turn-based games. There's games like Octopath series, Final Fantasy Tactics. It's just the Final Fantasy branding itself hasn't specifically done turn-based. Hamaguchi is asked whether he thinks that main Final Fantasy titles might come back to the series' roots in that sense for turn-based. FF7 Remake and 16 are both action-based RPG designs, essentially for the Final Fantasy numbered series. The game's design is based on the director's decision himself. For the new title, whether it's action or turn-based, it's not predetermined yet. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say FF17 is already in the works, and I don't know if that game itself would be turn-based or if it would even follow the FF7 Remake style of ATB. Turn-based hybrid combat. I'd love to see it. I know there's a lot of people that say they don't like the remake style of combat, and there's a lot of people that don't like the 16 style of combat. I personally like turn-based, and I also like Final Fantasy 7 Remake's combat and Rebirth's combat system. Whether or not FF7 Remake was a turn-based type of game or not, I still would have enjoyed it because I find that type of play style to be very enjoyable. And obviously, you know, with all the combat guides and stuff we have on the channel, we feel the same way for Remake and Rebirth. I would in the future like to see if FF17 or 18 or something could do turn-based and put a nice little twist on whatever the genre has been missing for quite some time. Not straight up copy Expedition 33, because that would just be kind of weird. But one can hope. I mean, if you look at it, they did hang out with the Expedition 33 devs not too long ago. Talked a lot about future projects together. So only time can tell, because Hamaguchi says it's up to the director himself. It's not necessarily that it's a predetermined thing. It's whatever the director or head of that project is interested in doing. They are the decision maker. Now, if you ask him if his next game is going to be an RPG, yes, it's definitely a possibility. But is it going to be a turn-based RPG? We're taking this aside from the fact that Expedition 33 was received well. We received a lot of JRPGs are back comments. For me, I'm thinking what the game experience fans will enjoy. That's the most important point. So Hamaguchi is basically saying that they hear the overwhelming praise for what Expedition 33 brought and what people want to see. So to me, this kind of makes it so that they're taking that into consideration. I just don't know if FF17 or 18 or a spin-off title will do it. Whatever Hamaguchi seems to be working on next. And he follows it up by saying, I'm not just going to make a game and say I'm making a turn-based game or an action-based game. It can go either way. What's most important is finding out what game design will appeal to the fans. It will be some time before we hear something official about 17, go back into turn-based and put their own little spin or twist on it. I do like the reactive aspect of it, which isn't something that Claire did on their own. I mean, we had Super Mario RPG, Legend of Dragoon. Many RPGs before Claire Obscure had reaction-based systems. I mean, the devs have said it themselves. They've been very well inspired by it. This one is very interesting. So Hamaguchi says he aims to give players a new gameplay experience with part 3 of the remake trilogy. Says his vision for the project is just as the story changes between each game, he wants to have a new gaming experience with each entry. He kind of further elaborates a little bit more on this that we previously talked about. The first installment featured story-driven progression. The second part expanded on that with an open world design and offered greater player freedom. But upon the second part, the third part is also being created to deliver players a new gaming experience, so please look forward to it. What I can take away from this, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously the high wind. Being able to travel in the air is a whole different way to traverse the world that we already know in Final Fantasy 7. As far as what Rebirth did, introducing that crazy fast travel and using the tiny Bronco to sort of bridge the gap between waters. And we know as much. Hamaguchi already talked about that. The main thing that I think about with this is the underwater aspect. I really loved what Tears of the Kingdom did for Zelda, where they added the depths, the inner depths, where it's a whole new area that's just as large as the main and like the upper sky world, but it's underground. The depths offer a very new and interesting design choice. So I hope that with the introduction in Rebirth, because in the original game we kind of did it in a very minimal way, we were able to use the submarine to explore the underwater areas of the planet, and obviously go to new locations underwater and fight super bosses underwater. I hope this is expanded on even more, and we get to do more cool things of that sort, and sort of shy away a little bit from the VR stuff. Like, you know, let's kind of like make VR not the end all be all when it comes to finalize hard and like side content. I want to do more things in the actual world, please. Those are two things that come to my mind. I want to hear what you guys think. How crazy could they go with this? Like, are we talking like space? Can we go to space and actually interact with things, if you know what I mean? The middle regular world map area, obviously we'd have the high wind and then traversing that on foot, and then underwater, a whole new expanded on area. That'd be really cool. In the original game, there was also branching paths underwater that could lead you into side story content, different caverns. You even had to find a key to progress the story underwater. So there's a lot they could do with that, and I feel like they are going to be expanding on that. But I want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments, what direction you think they're going to be taking with this. And also make sure you check out our Final Fantasy VII Remake Platinum movie. We made that a couple weeks ago. I know there's going to be a lot of newcomers coming to the game on Xbox and Nintendo Switch that will be trying to do a 100% completion. So that video should help out you guys a lot, and it's a really entertaining movie that I took a very long time to make. We're going to be working on the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth one soon as we hit 200k subscribers. So make sure you guys subscribe and hit that notification bell to help raise that 38% even higher so we get 200k, and we got the FF7 Rebirth video in the works. And then finally, to ease a lot of players' concerns, they were asked about the time management system as far as Final Fantasy VII Rebirth goes, with all the side content, and a lot of players felt a little overwhelmed with that. Hamaguchi says in regards to that, for Rebirth, he didn't feel like they were longer than necessary. He feels like nowadays players just have too much to do and too much to play, and so often they feel the urge to complete something quickly. I get what he means. I don't think it's necessarily that. If I had to really pick a moment that really stood out to me that was way too long, was like some of the gold saucer stuff, and then having to redo that all again on hard mode in order to fully platinum the game and get like some of the best equipment is not exactly fun. And then chapter 13 could have been split up into probably 2 or 3 more chapters. There was just way too much stuff and too long of gameplay for it. And I'm not saying that the story dumps were too crazy. As a matter of fact, if you go back and you look at chapter 13's story, the story elements were actually very minimal. What took a lot longer was breaking up the party multiple times, having to readjust the parties multiple times, and the equipment and loadouts, which, by the way, please put loadouts in part 3. A lot of backtracking in the essence of time type of things. If they can find a better way to balance what they did in chapter 13 and 14 and those boss battles at the end, I think the game will absolutely flow a lot better. But he does follow up and he says, as we work to conclude the trilogy, we are striking a balance on how the story arcs are to be told and spread out so as to ensure that the game feels a bit more concise, which does give me hope. I would like to see that, and I hope that we don't lose a whole lot of content. I personally like for my video game to have a lot of game. I don't know about you guys and how you feel about that, but that's for another discussion that we should have down below. It's kind of interesting seeing Hamaguchi and them travel a lot and do a whole bunch of interviews as of recent. This is like his 8th or 9th interview, which we really haven't been covering them, just like mostly the notable stuff that I've been finding interesting. But obviously with Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth slated to come out on Xbox and Nintendo Switch finally, and that release is coming within the next 3 months, it's obvious that they're going to be promoting that a whole lot, because with those finally being on those systems, whenever part 3 comes out, I'm hoping that it is multi-platform at launch, so this way those fans that just got into the story don't have to wait too long and can still enjoy the game and story at the same pace as everybody else, which is crazy because when this game launched, it was just, you know, PlayStation 4 only, then it came out on PS5 only, then PC. Now we're getting to a point where Remake and Rebirth are being actively worked on to be multi-platform, which is all good news. Very fantastic news that I hope that we see when part 3 comes around. Fans don't have to wait too long and everybody can enjoy it on whatever platform it is that they want. Very interesting stuff. I want to hear what you guys think down below in the comments. Be sure to like the video if you enjoyed and subscribe if you are new. More Final Fantasy VII info is on the way and you don't want to miss any of it. My name is BltzZ, and thanks for watching.